Why do some early depictions of centaurs have human front legs? Was it intentional? How do we know they're centaurs? Hey guys, I'm Liz, and this is episode 2 of Weird Art History. We're all familiar with centaurs, right? Whether it's Greek mythology, fantasy novels, children's media, or even tabletop role-playing games, you're bound to have encountered this half-human, half-horse hybrid at some point in your life. Today, they're easily recognizable as creatures with the top half of a human torso grafted onto a horse's body at the neck. But what if I told you that wasn't always the case? Picture it. Tiryns, circa 730 through 690 BCE. Several cups are placed in a grave, Tiryns Phylaci grave 23, and many of them display a specific iconography often seen on vessels of this period, late geometric. The design is referred to as horse leader or master of horses, and typically depicts a man leading one or two horses. The motif itself is a status symbol, much as the animals themselves are at the time. However, there is one specific piece attributed to Tiryns Phylaci grave 23 that raises some questions. One of the vessels depicts the horse leader as a centaur, but not in the way that's typical of late geometric depictions of a centaur. Only the front half of the horse body is painted, and his feet face the wrong way. While there is purportedly evidence of other vessels from late geometric that indicate men becoming centaurs due to the artist running out of room, there's no evidence of that here. In his article, An Accidental Centaur, listed in the show notes, Doctor of Philosophy in Archaeology Matthew Lloyd posits that the artist may have encountered the opposite problem, and upon finding himself with more space on the cup than intended, turned the man into a centaur to rectify this. However, this is not the only depiction of a centaur from the 8th century BCE that was unusual by today's standards. Bronze Man and Centaur, a piece that is dated circa 750 BCE, and on display at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, clearly depicts a centaur who has an entirely human body with the haunches and back legs of a horse emerging from his lower back. While the reason behind the horse leader centaur may not be obvious, the depiction of this centaur is clearly intentional, as the sculpture is one of the finest recovered of the period. So why would someone intentionally depict a centaur with human front legs? I'm afraid we'll have to go back a little further in history to attempt to answer this question. First of all, it's important to note that while Greece had a history of composite creatures, like satyrs, gorgons, and sphinxes, centaurs existed in other cultures before they appeared in Greece, much like the others. There are Bronze Age terracotta sculptures believed to be centaurs that were found in Uigrit, modern-day Syria, that are depicted in a way that we would depict centaurs now, with the body of a quadruped. These centaurs are not exclusively equine, as some appear to be bulls, with the torso of a human attached at the base of the neck. The claims that these are centaurs, however, have been refuted. The second item of importance in understanding these centaurs is that centaur iconography disappeared from Greek historical record between the Bronze Age, 12th century BCE, and late geometric, 8th century BCE. With the reemergence of centaurs in art in the geometric period, there is a great degree of variation in not only centaur imagery, but also the depiction of other composite creatures. Even the father of all monsters, Typhon, isn't depicted consistently during this time. He even occasionally appears in works as a centaur. Consequently, what we see is a variation in representation of these creatures until roughly the 6th century BCE, at which point we see consistent, universal depictions of centaurs as we know them today. The last thing we need to consider is a big name in Greek mythology. Starting in the Axial Age, 600 to 501 BCE, there is another phase to this consistency in depiction. Moving forward, Chiron is frequently depicted as having human forelegs. It's worth noting that within Greek mythology, he, unlike other centaurs, had a unique origin story, was extremely intelligent, and immortal. It is common for Chiron to be depicted wearing clothing to emphasize his civility and distinguish him from other violent, barbaric centaurs. So, what do the human legs mean? They could have been simply a reflexive way to represent a creature with the back end of a horse with no visual cues. Art throughout history has often been subject to something like a giant game of telephone, with imagery and iconography shifting and solidifying over time as cultures interpret ideas in their own way before coming together on the larger global stage, much as we saw last week with the various depictions of the sea unicorn. Or perhaps they were ways to differentiate types of creatures, the way legs were used to set Chiron apart on axial age vessels. Maybe, on occasion, they were just mistakes, or happy accidents, depending on how you want to look at it. Whatever the case, I hope you learned something new about centaurs to use as an icebreaker on your next job interview. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and if you have any topic suggestions or constructive criticisms or thoughts about centaurs, please leave a comment. If you want more weird art history, be sure to like and subscribe. I hope to see you here next Saturday on the 3rd episode of Weird Art History. Later, nerds!